What if Padmé became a Sith to save Anakin? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The man she loved was gone. In his place stood a monster with golden eyes and a voice like ice. Anakin Skywalker, hero of the Republic, had become Darth Vader. The Jedi Temple burned. Younglings lay dead. And Palpatine smiled as he watched democracy die. But what if Padmé refused to accept this fate? What if, instead of dying of a broken heart, she chose to fight fire with fire? What if the woman who once stood for peace and justice decided that saving the man she loved was worth embracing the very darkness that consumed him? This is the story of how Senator Padmé Amidala became a Sith Lord to save Anakin Skywalker, and how that choice reshaped the galaxy forever. The crimson sunset over Coruscant paints the Senate district in blood-red hues as Senator Padmé Amidala hurries through the marble corridors. Intelligence reports clutched in her trembling hands have just shattered everything she believed about the man she married. The ornate halls echo with whispered conversations of senators whose voices carry undertones of fear and uncertainty. Captain Typho. Senator, you received my urgent transmission? Padmé. Yes, Captain. Tell me everything you know about what happened at the Jedi Temple. Captain Typho. The reports are disturbing, Senator. Clone troopers, the same ones who fought alongside the Jedi throughout the war, turned on them without warning. Initial casualty reports suggest hundreds of Jedi were killed, including younglings. Padmé's face pales as she processes this information. Her mind immediately turns to Anakin, and a cold dread settles in her stomach. She had sensed something changing in him over the past weeks, a darkness that seemed to grow stronger each day. Padmé, what about Master Windu, Master Yoda? Have there been any reports of survivors? Captain Typho. Master Windu was reportedly killed attempting to arrest Chancellor Palpatine for treason. Master Yoda's whereabouts are unknown. As for Knight Skywalker, Padmé, what about Anakin, Captain Typho? Intelligence suggests he led the attack on the temple. Senator, I'm sorry. The datapad slips from Padmé's trembling fingers, clattering to the floor. The sound echoes through the corridor like a death knell. Everything she thought she knew about the man she loved, about the war, about the Republic itself, crumbles around her. Padmé, that's impossible. Anakin would never. He couldn't. But even as she speaks the words, doubt creeps into her voice. She remembers the nightmares that had plagued him, the anger that seemed to consume him whenever he spoke of the Jedi Council, the way his eyes would sometimes flash with something dark and hungry. Senator Bail Organa approaches from down the corridor, his own expression grim. Behind him walks Mon Mothma, her usual grace overshadowed by obvious distress. Bail Organa. Padmé, we need to talk. Privately. The three senators make their way to Padmé's private office, where Bail activates a security scrambler to prevent eavesdropping. Mon Mothma. The Chancellor has declared himself Emperor. The Senate voted him emergency powers that essentially dissolve the Republic. We're living under martial law now, Padmé. This is exactly what I feared would happen. The war, the emergency powers, the gradual erosion of our freedoms. It was all orchestrated. Bail Organa, there's more. Reports are coming in from across the galaxy of Jedi, being hunted down and executed. They're calling it Order 66. Someone turned the clone army against the Jedi. Padmé sinks into her chair, her mind racing. She thinks of Anakin's recent meetings with the Chancellor, his growing admiration for Palpatine's leadership, the way he would defend the man even when she expressed concerns about the accumulation of power. Padmé, I need to see Anakin. I need to understand what's happened to him. Mon Mothma. Padmé, if the reports are true, if he really did lead the attack on the temple, approaching him could be dangerous. Padmé, he's my husband. I know him better than anyone. There has to be an explanation. But as she speaks, she realizes she's not entirely certain of that anymore. The man who had been coming home to her these past weeks felt like a stranger wearing Anakin's face. Later that evening, Padmé returns to her apartment in the Senate district. The familiar space feels different now, charged with an energy that makes her skin crawl. She can sense Anakin's presence before she sees him, a dark weight pressing against her consciousness. He emerges from the shadows of their bedroom, and Padmé gasps at the sight of him. His eyes, once bright blue with warmth and life, now burn with an intense amber light. His face is harder, colder, as if carved from stone. Anakin. Padmé, I've been waiting for you. His voice carries an edge she's never heard before. A barely controlled violence that makes her take an involuntary step backward. Padmé. Anakin, what happened today? The reports I'm hearing, they can't be true. Anakin. The Jedi betrayed the Republic. Padmé. They attempted to assassinate Chancellor Palpatine and seize control of the government. I did what needed to be done to protect democracy. The words sound rehearsed, as if he's repeating something he's been told rather than expressing his own thoughts. Padmé searches his face for any sign of the man she married, but finds only a cold stranger. Padmé, you killed them? The Jedi who trained you? Who fought beside you? Anakin. They were traitors. All of them. They would have destroyed everything we fought to build. Padmé. What about the younglings? Were children traitors too? For a moment, something flickers in Anakin's eyes. Pain, regret, horror. But it's quickly buried beneath that cold amber glow. Anakin. The Emperor showed me the truth, Padmé. The Jedi were planning to overthrow the Republic and install themselves as rulers. They were going to eliminate anyone who opposed them, including you. Padmé. That's not true, Anakin. You know that's not true. Anakin, I know what I've seen. I know what I've felt. The dark side has given me clarity, shown me the corruption that was eating away at the galaxy from within. Padmé's blood runs cold. The dark side. The words hang in the air between them like a poison gas, explaining everything and nothing at the same time. Padmé. The dark side? Anakin. Listen to yourself. This isn't who you are, Anakin. This is who I've always been. The Jedi tried to suppress my true nature, make me weak and compliant. But the Emperor has shown me my potential. He moves closer to her, and Padmé can feel waves of dark energy rolling off him like heat from a fire. It's intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. Anakin, you should be proud, Padmé. I'm finally strong enough to protect you, to protect our child. No one will ever be able to hurt you again. Padmé's hand instinctively moves to her swollen belly. She's nearly 6 months pregnant now, and the life growing inside her seems to respond to Anakin's dark presence. with agitation. Padmé, our children, Anakin. We're having twins. Something shifts in his expression. A flicker of the old Anakin breaking through the darkness. Anakin, twins? You're sure? Padmé. The medical droids confirmed it yesterday. A boy and a girl. For a moment, his face softens, and she sees the man she fell in love with. But then, the darkness reasserts itself, and his expression hardens again. Anakin, they'll be powerful, like their father, strong enough to help us bring order to the galaxy. The casual way he speaks about using their unborn children as tools of control sends a chill down Padmé's spine. This isn't her husband talking. This is someone else. Someone who has taken over Anakin's body and twisted his thoughts beyond recognition. Padmé, I think we should both get some rest. It's been a long day. Anakin nods, seemingly satisfied with her compliance. As he retreats to their bedroom, Padmé moves to her private study and activates her personal communicator. Padmé, C-3PO, I need you to access the Senate archives. Everything classified, under Force Studies, Sith history, and psychological manipulation techniques. C-3PO, oh my, Senator Amidala. Those are highly restricted topics. Many of them haven't been accessed in centuries. Padmé, use my senatorial clearance codes. If that's not enough, use the emergency authorization protocols. C-3PO. Very well, Senator. Though I must say, this seems like dangerous territory to explore. Padmé, everything is dangerous now. 3PO, just send me whatever you can find. As the droid begins his search, Padmé stares out at the Coruscant skyline. Somewhere out there, the man she loves is being consumed by darkness, and she's powerless to stop it. But perhaps, if she can understand what's been done to him, she can find a way to undo it. The datapad chimes with incoming files, and Padmé begins to read. What she discovers over the next several hours shakes her to her core. The archives contain detailed accounts of Sith mind control techniques, methods of psychological conditioning that can turn even the strongest-willed individuals into willing servants. The texts describe how the Sith lords of old would identify potential apprentices and slowly corrupt them over months or years, using a combination of emotional manipulation, force influence, and gradual exposure to dark side energies. The process was designed to make the victim believe they were choosing their path freely, while actually being guided every step of the way. As she reads, Padmé begins to see the pattern. Palpatine's gradual mentorship of Anakin, the way he positioned himself as a father figure, the carefully timed revelations and philosophical discussions. It had all been a setup, a long-term plan to turn the most powerful Jedi into his personal weapon. But the more she reads, the more she realizes the true scope of the horror. The conditioning techniques described in the archives don't just change behavior, they fundamentally alter the victim's personality and memories. The Anakin she's been speaking to isn't just influenced by Palpatine. He's been psychologically reconstructed from the ground up. Over the following days, Padmé watches helplessly as Anakin becomes increasingly distant and cold. He speaks about the new empire with mechanical enthusiasm, reciting talking points about order and security as if reading from a script. When she tries to engage him about their past, their relationship, anything that might connect with the real Anakin, His responses are vague and detached. Anakin, the past is irrelevant. Padmé, what matters is building a better future for our children. Padmé, but what about our memories? Our wedding on Naboo, the time we spent by the lake. Anakin, those were pleasant moments, but they were also times of weakness. I was distracted by emotion when I should have been focused on my duties. Each conversation confirms Padmé's worst fears. This isn't just Anakin making bad choices or falling to temptation. His very personality has been systematically dismantled and rebuilt according to Palpatine's design. She continues her research with growing desperation, diving deeper into the darkest corners of the Sith archives. What she finds there terrifies and fascinates her in equal measure. The Sith weren't just warriors or politicians. They were experts in the manipulation of consciousness itself. The texts describe techniques for breaking mental conditioning, but they all come with the same warning. To understand Sith manipulation well enough to counter it, one must first master the same dark arts. It's like fighting fire with fire, requiring the practitioner to embrace the very corruption they're trying to eliminate. Padmé, C-3PO. I need you to search for any information about force bonds between individuals, specifically how they're created and how they can be manipulated. C-3PO. Oh dear, Senator. Force bonds are incredibly rare and powerful connections. The archives suggest they're usually formed through shared trauma or intense emotional experiences. Padmé, what about artificially created bonds? Could someone use the Force to create a connection where none existed before? C-3PO. The texts suggest it's possible, though extremely dangerous. Such bonds would likely be unstable and could cause severe psychological damage to both participants. Padmé's mind races as she considers the implications. If Palpatine has created some kind of force bond with Anakin, that would explain the depth of his control. But it might also provide a way to break that control if she can understand how it works. She spends the next week immersing herself in ancient Sith philosophy and technique. The learning curve is steep and treacherous. Unlike Jedi teachings, which emphasize gradual understanding and emotional control, Sith knowledge is designed to be immediately intoxicating. The texts seem to whisper to her directly, promising power and understanding if she'll just embrace the anger and fear she's feeling. At first, she resists these temptations, focusing purely on the academic aspects of the material. But as days pass, and she watches Anakin slip further away from her, desperation begins to override caution. She starts practicing basic Force manipulation, using her emotional turmoil as fuel for her growing abilities. The pregnancy complicates everything. The twins she's carrying are incredibly Force-sensitive, and they seem to respond to her emotional state with unusual intensity. When she's angry or afraid, they become agitated. When she experiments with the dark side techniques, they seem to absorb the energy, growing stronger and more active. Dr. Bestan. Senator, your stress levels are concerning. The baby's Force signatures are unusually strong for their developmental stage. Padmé, is that dangerous, Dr. Bestan? We're in uncharted territory. Force-sensitive pregnancies are rare enough, but twins with this level of power, we'll need to monitor you very carefully. Padmé nods, but privately she wonders if her dark side experiments are affecting the children. The thought should horrify her, but instead, she finds herself curious about what kind of power they might possess. The realization that she's beginning to think like a Sith jolts her, but not enough to make her stop. Meanwhile, her political duties continue. The Empire is rapidly consolidating power, and Padmé finds herself in the unique position of being both a potential resistance leader and the wife of Palpatine's primary enforcer. She uses this access to gather intelligence while carefully maintaining her cover. During a Senate session discussing the new Imperial military structure, Padmé watches Anakin from the gallery. He stands beside Palpatine like a shadow, his presence dark and imposing. Other senators give him a wide berth, instinctively afraid of the power radiating from him. Emperor Palpatine. The Jedi Rebellion has been crushed, but we must remain vigilant against remaining threats to our peace and security. Lord Vader will continue to hunt down any surviving conspirators. Lord Vader. Padmé's heart breaks a little more at hearing Anakin referred to by that name. It's as if her husband has been completely erased, replaced by this dark stranger who wears his face. After the session, she approaches Palpatine directly. It's a calculated risk, but she needs to understand the full scope of what's been done to Anakin. Padmé, Your Majesty, I wanted to thank you for taking such good care of Anakin. I know the transition to the new order has been difficult for everyone. Palpatine. Of course, my dear Senator. Lord Vader is invaluable to the Empire. I've simply helped him realize his true potential. Padmé. He seems different, more focused, but also more distant. Palpatine. The dark side brings clarity, Senator Amidala. It strips away the illusions and weaknesses that hold us back. Your husband is stronger now than he's ever been. Padmé. And the Jedi teachings? Has he abandoned them completely? Palpatine. The Jedi filled his head with lies about attachment and emotion. I've helped him see that these things can be sources of strength rather than weakness. His love for you, for instance, is what motivates him to build a safer galaxy. The words are carefully chosen, designed to reassure her, while revealing nothing of the true manipulation involved. But Padmé has been studying Sith techniques for weeks now, and she can hear the subtle Force influence woven through his speech. Padmé, I appreciate everything you've done for him, Your Majesty. Palpatine, think nothing of it. Strong bonds are the foundation of any stable society. The Empire will ensure that families like yours are protected and prosper. That evening, Padmé returns home to find Anakin waiting for her. But this time, something is different. There's a tension in his posture, a calculating look in his amber eyes that wasn't there before. Anakin, you spoke with the Emperor today. It's not a question. And Padmé realizes that Palpatine must have reported their conversation. She wonders how much else he knows about her activities. Padmé, I wanted to understand what's happened to you. What's changed? Anakin, I've evolved. I've become what I was always meant to be. Padmé, and what's that? Anakin, powerful enough to protect what matters, strong enough to bring order to chaos. He moves closer to her, and she can feel the dark side energy rolling off him in waves. But underneath it, she senses something else. Pain, confusion, a deep-seated agony that he's trying to bury beneath layers of artificial certainty. "Padmé, show me." The words leave her lips before she can stop them. Anakin's eyes widen slightly, surprised by her request. "Anakin, show you what, Padmé? This power you've found, this strength, if it's really made you better, show me how it works." For a moment, Anakin hesitates. Then he extends his hand, and Padmé feels the Force flowing between them. But this isn't the warm, life-affirming energy she remembers from her brief experiences with Jedi. This is something cold and hungry, something that feeds on pain and fear. The sensation is overwhelming and intoxicating. Through the dark side connection, she can feel Anakin's emotional state. The artificial confidence overlaid deep wells of anguish and confusion. She can sense the mental barriers that have been erected around his memories, the carefully constructed justifications for his actions. But she can also feel his genuine love for her, buried beneath layers of conditioning but still present. That spark of authentic emotion gives her hope, and she latches onto it with everything she has. The moment of connection lasts only seconds before Anakin pulls away, his expression troubled. "Anakin, you felt it, didn't you? The clarity, the power." "Padmé, I felt your pain, Anakin. I felt how much you're hurting." Something flickers in his eyes, a crack in the mental armor that's been built around him. For an instant, she sees the real Anakin looking back at her, desperate and afraid. "Anakin, I don't know what you mean." But his voice wavers, and Padmé knows she's found a weak point in Palpatine's conditioning. The question is whether she's strong enough to exploit it without losing herself in the process. That night, while Anakin sleeps fitfully beside her, Padmé begins to plan. She's learned enough about Sith techniques to understand the scope of the challenge. Breaking Palpatine's hold on Anakin won't be a matter of reasoning with him, or appealing to his better nature. The Emperor has systematically dismantled those aspects of his personality and rebuilt them according to his own design. No, saving Anakin will require fighting fire with fire. She'll have to master the same dark arts that are being used to control him, become powerful enough in the Force to wage a battle for his very soul. The risk is enormous. The Sith archives make it clear that anyone who delves too deeply into the dark side risks being consumed by it. But the alternative is watching the man she loves fade away completely, becoming nothing more than Palpatine's weapon. That's a risk she's not willing to accept. The next morning, Padmé begins her true descent into darkness. She starts with meditation, but instead of seeking the peace and serenity that Jedi practice, she reaches for her pain, her anger, her desperate love for Anakin. The emotions burn through her like acid, but she forces herself to embrace them, to use them as fuel for her growing power. Her first breakthrough comes during a Senate committee meeting on Imperial security measures. Senator Orn-Free Tar is droning on about the need for increased surveillance when Padmé decides to test her abilities. She reaches out with the Force, touching his mind with the lightest possible influence. Senator Orn-Free Tar. And furthermore, I believe we should consider, that is, perhaps we've been too hasty in these measures. The change is subtle but noticeable. Other senators look surprised as the typically hawkish Twi'lek begins advocating for moderation. Padmé maintains the influence for just a few moments before releasing it, but the experience is intoxicating. The power is immediate and effective in a way that political persuasion could never be. She can actually reach into someone's mind and change their thoughts, make them see things her way without them even realizing it. The temptation to use this ability more broadly is overwhelming. Over the following weeks, Padmé's abilities grow stronger. She practices during every Senate session, subtly influencing votes and debates while maintaining her public facade of compliance with the new order. Her success rate is remarkable. Senators who were strongly pro-imperial begin expressing doubts, while others start asking uncomfortable questions about the speed of political changes. But the dark side is a seductive teacher, and each use of her power makes the next one easier. She begins to see other people as puppets to be manipulated rather than individuals with their own rights and dignity. The realization that she's becoming something she once would have despised barely registers. The power is too intoxicating, too necessary for her ultimate goal. The twins respond to her growing darkness with increased activity. They seem to feed on the dark side energy she's channeling, growing stronger and more force-sensitive with each passing day. Dr. Bestan expresses concern about their rapid development, but Padmé finds herself more fascinated than worried. Dr. Bestan: Senator, the baby's force signatures are off the charts. They're developing abilities that shouldn't manifest until years after birth. Padmé: what kind of abilities? Dr. Bestan: basic telekinesis, emotional projection, possibly even limited telepathy. It's unprecedented. Padmé: are they in any danger? Dr. Bestan: I don't know. We've never seen anything like this before. I'd recommend bringing in a Jedi healer for consultation. But Padmé, there are no Jedi left. The irony isn't lost on her. Her children are developing unprecedented force abilities, possibly as a result of her dark side experiments. And the only people who might understand what's happening have been systematically eliminated. As her power grows, Padmé begins to sense other force-sensitive individuals in the Senate and throughout Coruscant. Most are weak, barely registering above baseline human sensitivity. But occasionally she encounters someone with real potential, usually someone hiding their abilities out of fear of Imperial persecution. One such individual is Sly Moore, Palpatine's staff aide. Padmé has always suspected there was more to the pale Umbaran woman than meets the eye, and her newfound sensitivity confirms it. Moore radiates dark side energy almost as strongly as Anakin, suggesting a long history of Sith training. The discovery is both alarming and enlightening. If Palpatine has other force-sensitive agents beyond Anakin, it explains how he's been able to maintain such tight control over the Empire. It also suggests that her own activities may not have gone unnoticed. Padmé: Sly, I don't believe we've ever been formally introduced. Sly Moore: Senator Amidala, your reputation precedes you. There's something in Moore's voice, a subtle emphasis that suggests she knows more than she's letting on. Padmé decides to take a calculated risk. Padmé: I've been studying Imperial governance structures. Fascinating how efficiently the new system operates. Sly Moore: efficiency requires proper motivation. The Emperor understands what drives people to excellence. The words are innocuous on the surface, but Padmé can feel the Force influence woven through them. Moore is probing her defenses, testing her mental shields. It's a game of chess played on multiple levels. Padmé: motivation is indeed key, though I've found that understanding the underlying forces at work is equally important. Sly more. Understanding can be dangerous, Senator. Some knowledge is better. Left unexplored. The warning is clear, but Padmé doesn't back down. She's learned enough to protect herself, and she needs to know how much the Empire suspects about her activities. Padmé, I appreciate your concern, but I've always believed that knowledge is power. Sly more. Power is power, Senator. Knowledge is simply a tool for acquiring it. The conversation ends there, but Padmé understands that lines have been drawn. The Empire is aware of her force sensitivity, but they're not yet sure what to do about it. That gives her time, but not much. That evening, she intensifies her training. The Sith archives contain detailed instructions for advanced techniques, but they all require significant emotional fuel. Padmé finds herself reliving every moment of pain and frustration from her relationship with Anakin, using those memories to power her growing abilities. She learns to manipulate matter at the molecular level, to project her consciousness across vast distances, to delve into the minds of others without their knowledge. Each new technique brings her closer to understanding how Palpatine's control over Anakin works, but it also distances her further from the person she used to be. The change is gradual but noticeable. Senators who once respected her political acumen now seem wary of her presence. Her staff begins walking on eggshells around her, responding to the subtle aura of menace that she's developed. Even Captain Typho, who has served her loyally for years, starts treating her with nervous deference. Captain Typho, Senator, you seem different lately, more intense. Padmé, the times require intensity. Captain, the Empire demands focus and determination from all of us. Captain Typho, of course, Senator. I just wanted you to know that if you ever need someone to talk to, Padmé, I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm beginning to understand things that were hidden from me before. The captain nods uncertainly and retreats, but Padmé can see the fear in his eyes. She's becoming something that frightens people, and the worst part is that she's beginning to enjoy that fear. It represents respect, obedience, the power to shape events according to her will. As her abilities continue to develop, Padmé starts experimenting with techniques specifically designed to break mental conditioning. The Sith archives describe methods for shattering psychological barriers and rebuilding personality structures, but they require enormous power and precision. One mistake could permanently damage or even kill the subject. She practices on herself first, carefully probing the edges of her own memories and emotional responses. The experience is disorienting and painful, like performing surgery on her own brain. But gradually, she begins to understand how consciousness can be manipulated and reshaped. The twins seem to respond to these experiments with unusual calm. Instead of the agitation they showed during her earlier training, they now seem to draw strength from her activities. Padmé wonders if they're somehow participating in her learning process, absorbing knowledge and techniques that will serve them later. By her 8th month of pregnancy, Padmé has reached a level of force mastery that rivals many Sith lords of old. She can influence large groups of people simultaneously, manipulate matter on a grand scale, and peer into the deepest recesses of the human mind. But more importantly, she finally understands the specific techniques that Palpatine has used on Anakin. The Emperor's control is based on a complex web of force bonds, memory alterations, and emotional conditioning. He's essentially created an artificial personality overlay that suppresses Anakin's true self while amplifying his darker impulses. Breaking this control will require surgical precision and enormous power. But Padmé believes she's finally ready to attempt it. The opportunity comes sooner than expected. News arrives that a group of Jedi survivors has been discovered hiding in the Outer Rim, and Palpatine dispatches Anakin to eliminate them. It's the perfect chance for Padmé to confront him away from Imperial oversight. Padmé. Anakin. I want to come with you, Anakin. That's not necessary, Padmé. This is military business, Padmé. I'm 8 months pregnant with your children. Humor me. I want to spend time with you before they're born. Something in her voice, enhanced by subtle Force influence, penetrates his defenses. For a moment, the real Anakin looks out through his eyes, confused and vulnerable. Anakin. Yes, perhaps that would be nice, but you'll need to stay on the ship. These Jedi are dangerous. Padmé. Of course. I just want to be near you. The journey to the Outer Rim gives Padmé time to prepare mentally for what's coming. She knows she'll only get one chance. If she fails, Palpatine will almost certainly kill her and take the twins for his own purposes. But if she succeeds, she might be able to save the man she loves and protect their children from the Empire's influence. As their ship drops out of hyperspace near the remote world where the Jedi are hiding, Padmé makes her final preparations. She centers herself in the dark side, drawing power from her love for Anakin, her hatred of Palpatine, and her determination to protect her family. The energy builds within her until she feels like she might explode from the pressure. Anakin. We'll be landing soon. Are you all right? You seem different. Padmé. I'm perfect, Anakin. For the first time in months, I know exactly what I need to do. The planet's surface is barren and windswept, marked by ancient ruins and abandoned settlements. The Jedi have taken refuge in a network of caves that provide natural shielding from sensors and orbital scans. It's a perfect hiding place, but also a perfect trap. As Anakin leads a squad of clone troopers into the cave system, Padmé follows at a distance. She can sense the Jedi ahead. 3 masters and 2 Padawans, their life forces flickering like candles in the darkness. They're afraid, but determined, preparing to make their final stand against impossible odds. The confrontation, when it comes, is brief and brutal. Anakin's power has grown enormously under Sith training, and the surviving Jedi are no match for him. Within minutes, 4 of the 5 are dead, their lightsabers adding to the collection he carries for Palpatine. The last survivor is a young Padawan, barely older than Anakin was when he first came to the Jedi Temple. She crouches in a corner of the cave, her lightsaber trembling in her hands as Anakin approaches. Padawan Nira. Please, I'm not a threat to anyone. I just want to live in peace. Anakin. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. The Sith code falls from his lips like a prayer. But Padmé can sense the internal struggle raging within him. The real Anakin is screaming against the conditioning, horrified by what he's about to do. This is her moment. Padmé steps out of the shadows, her own lightsaber, igniting with a crimson glow that matches Anakin's. The young Padawan stares in shock at the sight of the pregnant senator wielding a Sith weapon. Padmé. Anakin. Stop. Her voice carries force-enhanced authority that cuts through his conditioning like a blade. For a moment, his advance halts, confusion replacing the cold certainty in his amber eyes. Anakin. Padmé? How did you? What are you doing here? Padmé. I'm here to save you. She reaches out with the Force, not to attack, but to touch his mind. What she finds there confirms her worst fears. Palpatine's control is even more extensive than she realized. The Emperor has essentially hollowed out Anakin's personality and replaced it with a carefully constructed shell designed to serve his purposes. But beneath the layers of conditioning, she can still sense the real Anakin, trapped and agonized, but not destroyed. He's been buried so deeply that he can barely influence his own actions. But he's still there, still fighting. Padmé, I know what he did to you, Anakin. I know how he twisted your mind and made you into his weapon, but I can break his hold on you. Anakin, I don't know what you're talking about. The Emperor saved me from the Jedi's lies. But even as he speaks the words, Padmé can sense the doubt creeping into his voice. The artificial personality is beginning to crack under the pressure of her Force presence. Padmé, do you remember our wedding on Naboo? The way the sun felt on our faces as we said our vows. Anakin, that was a moment of weakness. Personal attachments make us vulnerable. Padmé, do you remember holding me after your mother died? The way you cried in my arms. Anakin, she was. I couldn't save her. I failed. Padmé, you remember the pain, but not the love. He's taken that from you, hasn't he? All the joy, all the warmth, all the reasons you had for caring about anything. The conditioning begins to crack more visibly. Anakin staggers, pressing his hands to his temples as competing sets of memories and emotions war within his mind. Anakin, stop. You're confusing me. The Emperor said this might happen, that enemies would try to turn me against him. Padmé, I'm not your enemy, Anakin. I'm your wife. I'm carrying your children. And I love you enough to follow you into darkness to bring you back. She extends her power fully now, using every technique she's learned to probe the boundaries of Palpatine's conditioning. The process is like defusing a bomb while blindfolded. One wrong move could destroy what's left of Anakin's original personality. But she's prepared for this moment, studied every aspect of Sith mind control until she understands it better than most of its practitioners. Slowly, carefully, she begins to unravel the Emperor's work. Each mental barrier she breaks releases a flood of suppressed memories and emotions. Anakin falls to his knees as years of genuine experiences come rushing back. His childhood on Tatooine, his training with Obi-Wan, his growing love for Padmé. But with the good memories come the bad ones that Palpatine had twisted and exploited. His mother's death, his massacre of the Tusken Raiders, his fears about losing Padmé. Anakin, I remember. Oh gods, what have I done? The younglings, the temple, I killed them all. The anguish in his voice is heartbreaking. But Padmé forces herself to continue. She can't stop now. Not when she's so close to breaking through completely. Padmé, those weren't your choices, Anakin. You were being controlled, manipulated by someone who saw you as nothing more than a tool. But even as she speaks, Padmé realizes that freeing Anakin from Palpatine's control isn't enough. The memories of what he's done under the Emperor's influence are too traumatic, too destructive. He'll either destroy himself with guilt or find a way to rationalize his actions. She needs to give him something else to focus on, something that can redirect his pain and anger toward a more constructive purpose. And she knows exactly what that should be. Padmé, Anakin, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I know who's responsible for all of this. I know who took you away from me and turned you into his weapon. Anakin, Palpatine, the Emperor, he's been in my head for years, hasn't he? Padmé, since before the Clone Wars began, maybe even since you were a child, he's been grooming you, preparing you for this moment. The realization hits Anakin like a physical blow. Everything he's believed about his transformation, his evolution into something greater, has been a lie. He's been nothing more than a puppet dancing to another man's tune. Anakin, he has to pay for this, for what he's done to me, to the Jedi, to the Republic. Padmé, yes, he does, but not like this, not in anger and revenge. We have to be smarter than him, more cunning. She can see the moment when her words take hold, when Anakin's rage begins to focus into something more productive. But she can also sense something else. The dark side energy she's been channeling throughout this process is affecting him as well. Instead of returning him to the light, she's simply changing the nature of his darkness. Padmé, we're going to destroy him, Anakin, but we're going to do it together, as equals. Anakin, together. Yes, yes, I can feel it. The power we could have together. The young Padawan who has been watching this exchange in terrified silence finally finds her voice. Padawan Nira, Senator Amidala, what you're doing, this isn't the Jedi way. This isn't the light side. Padmé turns to look at the girl, and for a moment her expression softens. She remembers being that young, that idealistic, believing that there were clear lines between good and evil. Padmé, the Jedi way failed, child. It failed to stop Palpatine, failed to protect your order, failed to preserve the Republic. Sometimes you have to fight darkness with darkness. The Padawan's lightsaber wavers in her hands as she senses the power radiating from both Padmé and Anakin. They're no longer the people they once were, but they're not quite the monsters that Palpatine tried to create either. They're something new, something unprecedented. Padmé, you can come with us if you want. We could use allies in what's coming, but understand that this won't be a crusade of light against dark. This will be a war of shadows, fought with weapons the Jedi never understood. The Padawan hesitates for a long moment, then slowly lowers her lightsaber. Padawan Nira, what happened to you? Senator, you were supposed to be one of the good ones. Padmé, I'm still fighting for good, child. I'm just using different methods. But even as she speaks the words, Padmé isn't entirely certain they're true. The line between necessary evil and genuine corruption is thinner than she once believed, and she's crossed it so many times that she's no longer sure which side she's on. What she does know is that she's saved Anakin from Palpatine's direct control. But in doing so, she's bound him to herself instead. Their Force bond is now deeper and more complex than anything the Emperor created. Based on genuine love, but tainted by the dark side methods she used to forge it. As they return to their ship, Padmé can feel the twins responding to the changed dynamic between their parents. They're more active than ever, as if feeding on the dark side energy that surrounds both Anakin and herself. She wonders what kind of children will be born from such a union of shadow and light. The journey back to Coruscant gives them time to plan their next move. Palpatine will sense the change in Anakin immediately. His control over his apprentice was too complete for its loss to go unnoticed. They'll need to act quickly before he can adapt to the new situation. Anakin. We could strike directly, board his shuttle when he's traveling, eliminate his guards, finish him in personal combat. Padmé. Too risky. He's more powerful than either of us individually, and he'll have contingency plans in place. We need to be subtler. Anakin. Then what do you suggest? Padmé. Politics. It's what I know best, and it's the one arena where we might have an advantage over him. She explains her plan as they travel through hyperspace. Instead of a direct confrontation, they'll work to undermine Palpatine's support structure. The Empire is still new and unstable. Many systems are chafing under Imperial rule, and numerous senators are beginning to question the rapid changes. With their combined Force abilities, they can influence key figures throughout the government and military. Not crude mind control, but subtle manipulations that will gradually erode Palpatine's power base. By the time he realizes what's happening, it will be too late to stop them. Anakin. And then Padmé. Then we take his place. We become the power behind the throne. Or perhaps the throne itself. The words hang in the air between them, heavy with implication. Padmé realizes she's essentially proposing that they become the very thing they're fighting against. Sith Lords seeking to rule the galaxy through manipulation and fear. But the alternative is allowing Palpatine to continue his reign of terror. And she's no longer willing to accept that. If bringing order to the galaxy requires embracing darkness, then she's prepared to make that sacrifice. As their ship approaches Coruscant, Padmé goes into labor. The timing couldn't be worse, but the twins seem determined to be born at this crucial moment. The labor is intense and complicated, made more so by the enormous Force energies swirling around the children. Dr. Bestan. Senator, I've never seen anything like this. The baby's Force signatures are so strong, they're interfering with the medical equipment. Padmé. Just do your best, Doctor. The pain is overwhelming. But Padmé forces herself to remain conscious and aware. She can sense that the twins are actively participating in their own birth, using Force abilities that shouldn't manifest for years. They're already more powerful than most adult Jedi, and they're not even fully born yet. Luke emerges first, his cries echoing with Force-enhanced strength that shatters several pieces of medical equipment. Leia follows minutes later, her presence calm but intensely focused. Both children bear the physical marks of their unusual conception. Their eyes occasionally flash with golden light, and their skin seems to shimmer with barely contained energy. Anakin. They're perfect. Padmé. Look at how strong they are. But Padmé can see beyond their physical beauty to the deeper reality of what they've created. These children are something new in the galaxy. Beings born from the union of light and dark, capable of powers that neither Jedi nor Sith fully understand. As she holds her newborn son and daughter, Padmé realizes that everything has changed. They're no longer just fighting to overthrow Palpatine. They're laying the foundation for a new kind of rule, one based on the absolute power of a Force-sensitive dynasty. The thought should terrify her, but instead, she finds it exhilarating. For the first time since this nightmare began, she feels like she has control over her destiny. She and Anakin are no longer victims of Palpatine's manipulation. They're players in their own right, with the power to reshape the galaxy according to their vision. Emperor Palpatine arrives at the medical facility within hours of the twins' birth, his presence dark and foreboding. But when he enters the room where Padmé is recovering, he immediately senses that something has changed. Palpatine, Lord Vader, your mission in the Outer Rim, was it successful? Anakin, the Jedi are dead, Master. The words are technically true, but Palpatine can sense the subtle shift in Anakin's tone and demeanor. The absolute obedience he's cultivated is no longer present, replaced by something more complex and dangerous. Palpatine, I sense conflict in you, my apprentice. What happened out there? Anakin, I remembered things, Master. Things I had forgotten. Palpatine's yellow eyes narrow as he reaches out with the Force to probe Anakin's mind. What he finds there shocks him. The careful conditioning he spent years building has been systematically dismantled and replaced with something else entirely. Palpatine, interesting. It seems someone has been teaching you new techniques, Lord Vader. He turns his attention to Padmé, and his expression shifts to one of genuine surprise. The pregnant senator, he remembers, has been transformed into something far more dangerous. Power radiates from her like heat from a star, dark and hungry and focused. Palpatine, Senator Amidala, or should I say, Lady Vader, you've been busy during your pregnancy. Padmé, I've been learning, Your Majesty, about the Force, about power, about what it takes to survive in your empire. Palpatine, and what conclusions have you reached? Padmé, that the galaxy needs strong leadership, that sometimes peace requires the application of superior force, that love and loyalty can be the foundation of order. The words are carefully chosen, echoing Sith philosophy while subtly challenging Palpatine's authority. She's walking a tightrope, acknowledging his power while asserting her own position. Palpatine, how refreshing to see such clarity of thought. Perhaps you would be interested in formal training. The dark side has much to offer those wise enough to embrace it. Padmé, I would be honored, Your Majesty. But even as she speaks, Padmé is already planning Palpatine's downfall. The Emperor is powerful, but he's also alone. She and Anakin have each other, have their children, have the bonds of love and family that Palpatine deliberately rejected in his pursuit of power. That difference, she believes, will ultimately be his undoing. Over the following months, Padmé and Anakin work together to consolidate their position within the Empire. To outside observers, they appear to be model Imperial citizens, a powerful Sith Lord and his ambitious wife, raising their Force-sensitive children to serve the Emperor's vision. But behind the facade They're methodically building their own power base. Padmé uses her political skills and growing Force abilities to cultivate allies throughout the Senate and Imperial bureaucracy. Anakin leverages his position as Palpatine's enforcer to identify potential rebels and turn them to their cause instead of destroying them. The twins, Luke and Leia, develop at an unprecedented rate. By their first birthday, they're already demonstrating abilities that would be remarkable in adult Jedi. They can move objects with their minds, project their emotions to influence others, and seem to share a telepathic connection that allows them to communicate without words. More importantly, they show an instinctive understanding of both light and dark side techniques. Unlike traditional Sith or Jedi, they seem capable of drawing power from any emotion, whether positive or negative. There's something genuinely new in the galaxy. And Padmé believes they represent the future of Force mastery. Padmé: they're going to be more powerful than either of us, Anakin. Anakin: good. They'll need that power to build the galaxy we're going to leave them. The plan they've developed is audacious in its scope. Instead of simply killing Palpatine, they intend to gradually transfer his support structure to themselves. By the time they move against him directly, they'll already control most of the Empire's military and political apparatus. The process takes nearly 2 years, but their patience is rewarded. Key Imperial officers begin reporting to Anakin instead of directly to the Emperor. Senators who once rubber-stamped Palpatine's decrees start questioning his policies and looking to Padmé for alternative leadership. The Emperor isn't blind to what's happening, but he underestimates the scope of their ambition. He sees their actions as typical apprentice rivalry, the natural desire of a Sith student to eventually supplant his master. What he doesn't recognize is that Padmé and Anakin aren't following traditional Sith patterns of succession. They're not planning to replace him with another solitary tyrant. They're creating a new model of rule based on partnership and family loyalty. It's a subtle but crucial difference that will ultimately prove to be his downfall. The moment of truth comes during a private meeting in Palpatine's throne room. The Emperor has summoned both Anakin and Padmé, supposedly to discuss their children's education. But all three of them know that this is really a confrontation about the future of the Empire. Palpatine: your children are remarkably gifted, Lord and Lady Vader. I think it's time we began their formal training in the ways of the Sith. Padmé: that's very generous of you, Your Majesty, but Anakin and I have been handling their education ourselves. Palpatine: I'm sure you have, but there are aspects of Sith training that require specialized knowledge that only I possess. The threat is subtle but unmistakable. Palpatine wants to control the twins' development, to shape them into weapons for his own use, just as he shaped Anakin. But Padmé has no intention of allowing that to happen. Padmé: we appreciate your offer, Your Majesty, but we believe that children learn best from their parents. Palpatine: how traditional of you. But tradition can be a weakness, Lady Vader. The Sith have always believed in strength over sentiment, Anakin. Perhaps the Sith have been wrong about that. The words hang in the air like a challenge. Palpatine's expression doesn't change, but the temperature in the room seems to drop several degrees. Palpatine: explain yourself. My apprentice, Anakin. You've always taught that attachment is weakness, that love makes us vulnerable. But look at what Padmé and I have accomplished together. Our bond makes us stronger, not weaker. Palpatine. Your bond makes you predictable, exploitable. Love is a chain that binds you to weakness. Padmé. Only if you don't understand how to use it. She rises from her chair, and Palpatine can feel the dark side energy building around her. But this isn't the crude rage of a typical Sith. It's something more refined, more dangerous. Padmé, you've spent so long alone, so isolated in your pursuit of power, that you've forgotten what strength really means. It's not about dominating others through fear. It's about inspiring loyalty through genuine connection. Palpatine. Spare me your philosophy lessons, girl. Power is power, regardless of its source. Anakin. Then let's test that theory. The battle that follows is brief but decisive. Palpatine is incredibly powerful, but he's facing two opponents who fight as a perfectly coordinated unit. Where he expects Anakin to attack directly while Padmé provides support, he instead finds himself confronting a seamless fusion of their abilities. They don't just fight together. They fight as a single entity, their force powers intertwined in ways that Palpatine never imagined possible. Every attack he makes against one is countered by the other. Every defense he raises is bypassed by their combined assault. The Emperor's knowledge and experience give him initial advantages, but Padmé and Anakin's bond allows them to share strength and insight in real time. When Anakin begins to tire, Padmé's energy flows into him. When Padmé's defenses weaken, Anakin's power reinforces them. Palpatine. This is impossible. The rule of two exists for a reason. Padmé. The rule of two is obsolete, Emperor. You're fighting the future, and the future has moved beyond your understanding. The final blow comes when Anakin and Padmé combine their powers in a technique neither of them has attempted before. Instead of attacking Palpatine's body, they target his connection to the Force itself, using their bond to create a feedback loop that overwhelms his defenses. The Emperor screams as his own power turns against him, dark side energy tearing through his body like acid. Within moments, the most powerful Sith Lord in galactic history is reduced to ash and bone. In the silence that follows, Padmé and Anakin stand together in the ruins of the throne room, their children playing at their feet, oblivious to the significance of what has just occurred. Anakin. It's over. We're free. Padmé. No, Anakin. We're not free. We're responsible. She looks out at the Coruscant skyline, at the billions of beings who now depend on their leadership. The empire Palpatine built won't simply disappear with his death. Someone needs to guide it, to reshape it into something better. Padmé, we have a galaxy to rebuild, children to raise, and a future to secure. The work is just beginning. But as she speaks, Padmé realizes that they've already succeeded in ways she never anticipated. They've created something unprecedented. A Sith dynasty based on love rather than fear, on cooperation rather than domination. It's not the Republic she once served, but it might be something better. The empire that emerges under their joint rule is indeed different from Palpatine's vision. Slavery is abolished within months, replaced by systems of fair labor and social mobility. Corruption, once endemic throughout imperial bureaucracy, is eliminated through a combination of transparency measures and force-enhanced investigation. But it's still an autocracy, still a system where ultimate power rests in the hands of two individuals, and their extraordinarily gifted children. The difference is that Padmé and Anakin genuinely believe they're acting in the galaxy's best interests, and their subjects generally agree. The former rebellion, led by figures like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, finds itself in a peculiar position. The tyranny they fought against has been replaced by something more benevolent, but no less absolute. Some accept the new order, recognizing that life under the Vedas is better than anything they experienced under Palpatine. Others continue to argue for democratic governance, but they find little popular support. Obi-Wan Kenobi, watching from his exile on Tatooine, struggles to understand what his former apprentice has become. Anakin is no longer the fallen Jedi he mourned, but he's not the hero Obi-Wan once trained either. He's something new, something that doesn't fit traditional categories of light and dark. Obi-Wan, Master Yoda, I sense the children's power growing stronger every day. Luke and Leia, they could be the key to everything. Yoda, strong in the Force, they are, but clouded, their destiny remains. Parents they love, but choose their own path. They must. The twins, now approaching their 3rd birthday, are indeed growing more powerful by the day. They've begun to demonstrate abilities that go beyond traditional Force techniques, seemingly able to manipulate reality itself in small but significant ways. More concerning from Obi-Wan's perspective is their complete acceptance of their parents' worldview. They've been raised to believe that their family has a divine right to rule, that ordinary people need their guidance and protection. It's a seductive philosophy, especially when delivered by parents who clearly love them. Luke, Mama, why do some people not like Papa? Padmé, because they don't understand what we're trying to do for them, sweetheart. Some people are afraid of change, even when it's good for them. Leia, but we're helping them, aren't we? Padmé, we're trying to, my dear. But helping people sometimes means making difficult decisions that they don't like. The conversation is typical of how the twins are being educated. They're taught to see themselves as benevolent guardians of the galaxy, protectors of those too weak or ignorant to protect themselves. It's a worldview that combines genuine compassion with profound arrogance. As the years pass, the Vader dynasty becomes more entrenched. Luke and Leia are groomed from childhood to assume leadership roles, their education encompassing everything from statecraft to advanced Force techniques. By their 10th birthday, they're already more powerful than most adult Jedi from the Old Republic. Their training is unlike anything seen before in galactic history, where the Jedi taught restraint and the Sith encouraged excess. Padmé and Anakin have developed a curriculum that emphasizes balance and practical application. The twins learn to channel love and hate with equal skill, to use fear and hope as tools of governance. Luke, Mother, I don't understand why the old Jedi were afraid of emotion. When I feel angry about injustice, it makes me want to fix things. Padmé, because they didn't understand the difference between being controlled by emotion and controlling emotion. They thought the only way to avoid corruption was to feel nothing at all. Leia, but that's impossible, isn't it? Everyone feels something. Padmé, exactly, my dear. And when you try to suppress natural emotions, they find other ways to express themselves, usually destructive ways. Anakin, The Jedi created their own worst enemies by denying the full spectrum of the Force. They turned natural passions into forbidden temptations. Luke, so we're stronger because we don't have those restrictions? Anakin, we're more complete. We understand that the Force flows through all life, all emotion, all experience. The artificial divisions between light and dark were always arbitrary. These philosophical discussions take place in the family's private chambers, away from the formal classrooms where imperial tutors teach them conventional subjects. Here, surrounded by artifacts from both Jedi and Sith traditions, the twins receive an education that would horrify purists from either philosophy. They learn to meditate on love and fury in equal measure, to draw strength from both compassion and righteous anger. Their lightsaber training incorporates techniques from across the spectrum of Force traditions, creating a fighting style that's as beautiful as it is deadly. But more importantly, they learn statecraft from masters of the art. Padmé teaches them the subtle art of political manipulation, showing them how to read people's desires and fears, how to craft messages that resonate with different audiences, how to build coalitions of support. Padmé, politics is psychology on a massive scale, children. Every being in the galaxy wants something: security, prosperity, recognition, meaning. If you can understand what motivates people, you can lead them anywhere, Leia. But what if what they want isn't good for them, Padmé? Then you help them understand what they really need. Sometimes that requires patience. Sometimes it requires pressure. Always it requires wisdom to know the difference. Luke. And if they still refuse to listen, Padmé, then you make the hard choice for them. Leadership isn't about popularity, Luke. It's about responsibility. Anakin supplements these lessons with practical demonstrations of power. He takes the twins on missions throughout the Empire, showing them how their authority is enforced, how resistance is handled, how order is maintained in a galaxy of quadrillions of beings. On Ryloth, they observe as Anakin negotiates with Twi'lek clan leaders who have been hoarding resources meant for refugee resettlement. The conversation is polite but pointed, with subtle Force influence ensuring compliance. Anakin. Clan leader Numa, I'm sure you understand the importance of Imperial distribution protocols. Numa. Of course, Lord Vader. But our people have their own traditions, their own ways of managing resources. Anakin. Traditions are important, but they must serve the greater good, not hinder it. As he speaks, Anakin projects a subtle aura of authority that makes disagreement feel uncomfortable, even dangerous. The Twi'lek leader's resistance visibly weakens. Numa. Perhaps we've been too conservative in our interpretation of the guidelines. Anakin. I'm glad we could reach an understanding. The Empire values local autonomy, but not at the expense of galactic stability. Later, as their shuttle departs Ryloth with the disputed resources now properly allocated, Anakin explains the encounter to his children. Anakin, did you notice how I handled clan leader Numa's resistance? Luke, you used the Force to make her more agreeable to your suggestions. Anakin, more than that. I made compliance feel like her own idea. People are always more committed to decisions they believe they made freely. Leia, but she didn't really make the decision freely, did she? Anakin. True freedom is chaos. Leia. People think they want unlimited choice, but what they really want is to make the right choice. We simply help them recognize what that is. Luke. What if we're wrong, though? What if our choice isn't actually the right one? Anakin. Then we accept responsibility for our mistakes and work to correct them. That's the burden of leadership, son. Making decisions with incomplete information and living with the consequences. These lessons shape the twins' understanding of their role in the galaxy. They come to see themselves not as tyrants imposing their will, but as shepherds guiding their flock toward prosperity and security. It's a perspective that makes their eventual assumption of power feel natural and necessary. Their education extends beyond politics and force techniques to encompass art, science, economics, and culture. They study the great civilizations of galactic history, learning from both their achievements and their failures. In their private library, surrounded by holographic displays showing the rise and fall of the Infinite Empire, the Sith Empire, and the Old Republic, the twins debate the patterns of history with their mother, Leia. Every civilization eventually collapses, doesn't it? The Rakata, the ancient Sith, even the Republic, Padmé. All organic institutions contain the seeds of their own destruction. The Rakata became complacent. The ancient Sith were consumed by infighting. The Republic grew too large and corrupt to govern effectively. Luke. So what makes us different? How do we avoid their mistakes? Padmé. Vigilance. Adaptation. The willingness to change when circumstances require it. Most civilizations fail because they become rigid, unable to respond to new challenges. Leia. But if we change too much, don't we risk losing what made us successful in the first place? Padmé. That's the eternal balancing act of leadership, my dear. Preserving core values while adapting methods. Your father and I have built something unprecedented. An empire based on competence rather than tradition. On results rather than rhetoric. Luke. And when we inherit this empire, our job will be to improve it further. Padmé. Exactly. Each generation must build on the achievements of the previous one. That's how civilizations endure. But they're also something that would have been unthinkable in the days of the Sith or Jedi. Force users who draw equally from light and dark, who see emotion as a tool rather than a weakness or corruption. They represent a new paradigm in Force philosophy, one that their parents have carefully cultivated by their 15th birthday. Luke and Leia have begun to take on minor administrative roles within the Imperial bureaucracy. Luke gravitates toward military matters, spending time with fleet commanders and strategic planners. Leia prefers civilian governance, working with social scientists and economic advisors. Their first major assignment comes when a trade dispute threatens to destabilize the Corellian system. Multiple corporations are fighting over shipping routes, and local governments are taking sides in ways that could lead to armed conflict. Padmé. This will be a good test of your abilities, children. The situation is complex, with no clear right or wrong side. You'll need to find a solution that serves the greater good while respecting legitimate interests. Anakin. Remember, you're not there to impose Imperial will through force. You're there to facilitate a resolution that prevents greater harm. Luke. What if the parties refuse to negotiate in good faith? Anakin. Then you remind them of the consequences of failure. Sometimes people need to understand what they stand to lose before they appreciate what they have to gain. Leia. And if that doesn't work, Padmé, then you make the decision for them. But that should be a last resort. People are more likely to accept outcomes they've had a hand in creating. The mission to Corellia serves as a defining moment for both twins. They arrive to find the situation even more volatile than reported. With corporate security forces on the verge of open warfare and local governments preparing to choose sides, Luke takes charge of the security situation, using a combination of force powers and diplomatic pressure to diffuse tensions. His approach is direct but measured, making it clear that Imperial forces will intervene if necessary, while leaving room for face-saving compromises. Luke, gentlemen, I understand that your corporations have significant investments at stake, but I need you to understand that the Empire has even larger investments. The stability of this entire system and the billions of beings who depend on it. Corporate Executive Drex, Lord Skywalker, with respect, this is a matter of legitimate business competition. Our contracts clearly state, Luke, your contracts are meaningless if this system descends into chaos. War is expensive, executive, much more expensive than compromise. As he speaks, Luke projects an aura of calm authority that makes aggressive posturing feel foolish and counterproductive. The executives find themselves genuinely considering the costs of continued conflict. Corporate Executive Vega. Perhaps there's room for negotiation. If certain trade routes could be shared. Luke, now you're thinking constructively. The Empire prospers when its member systems prosper. Cooperation benefits everyone. Meanwhile, Leia works with local government leaders to address the underlying economic inequalities that made the trade dispute so volatile in the first place. Her approach is more subtle than her brother's, using careful analysis and long-term planning to create sustainable solutions. Leia, Chancellor Solo. The data shows that Corellia's economic growth has been unevenly distributed. That's creating social tensions that make conflicts like this one more likely. Chancellor Solo, Princess Skywalker, our economic policies have brought unprecedented prosperity to this system. Leia, to parts of this system. But look at these unemployment figures in the industrial sectors. Look at the wealth concentration indices. This isn't sustainable long-term. Chancellor Solo, you're suggesting we redistribute wealth. That sounds dangerously close to. Leia, I'm suggesting you invest in your people's potential. Unemployed workers don't buy products. Desperate people make poor decisions. Economic inequality is a security threat as much as a moral issue. Her arguments are reinforced by subtle force influence that makes her economic projections feel not just logical but inevitable. The Chancellor finds himself agreeing to reforms he would have rejected just hours earlier. By the end of their week-long mission, Luke and Leia have crafted a comprehensive solution that addresses both immediate tensions and underlying problems. The trade routes are reorganized on a profit-sharing basis. Economic development programs are established for disadvantaged regions, and new oversight mechanisms prevent future conflicts. The success of the Corellia mission establishes the twins as legitimate leaders in their own right, not just extensions of their parents' authority. Reports of their effectiveness spread throughout the Empire, creating anticipation for their eventual assumption of full power. The galaxy under their growing influence prospers in many measurable ways. War becomes virtually extinct as few systems are willing to challenge the Vader family's overwhelming power. Economic inequality decreases as imperial policies favor development and opportunity over exploitation. Even art and culture flourish under a regime that values human achievement alongside order and security. But there's a cost to this prosperity. Independent thought is subtly discouraged through force influence and social pressure. Dissent, while not violently suppressed, is marginalized and ignored. The galaxy has become a more comfortable cage, but it's still a cage. The transformation is gradual but inexorable. Universities receive generous funding for research that serves imperial interests, while projects that might challenge official policy struggle to find support. Artists and writers discover that works celebrating imperial values receive broader distribution and better compensation than those that don't. On Alderaan, now one of the Empire's most prosperous worlds, Queen Breha hosts a gathering of cultural leaders from across the galaxy. The conversation reveals how thoroughly imperial values have permeated even artistic expression. Queen Breha: your latest symphony was magnificent, Maestro Kira. The way it captured the harmony between individual expression and collective purpose was truly inspired. Maestro Kira: thank you, Your Majesty. I've been studying imperial philosophical texts, and I find their insights about the relationship between personal fulfillment and social responsibility deeply moving. Artist Veljanis: I've had similar experiences with my sculpture series on galactic unity. There's something profound about exploring how diversity strengthens rather than divides us. Queen Breha: it's remarkable how our understanding of these themes has deepened over the years. I remember when artists used to focus on, well, rather different subjects. Maestro Kira: you mean the old obsession with conflict and rebellion? I'm glad we've moved past that phase. Art should inspire and uplift, not dwell on negativity. Artist Veljanis: exactly. Why focus on problems when we can celebrate solutions? The Empire has given us so much to be grateful for. The conversation continues in this vein, with no one acknowledging that their shift in artistic focus might have been influenced by anything other than natural evolution. The artists genuinely believe they've discovered deeper truths about their craft, unaware of the subtle pressures that have shaped their thinking. Mon Mothma, now in her 70s, represents one of the last voices of the old rebellion. She continues to argue for democratic governance, but her words fall on increasingly deaf ears. Her speeches in the Senate are politely received but largely ignored, treated as quaint reminders of a less enlightened past. Mon Mothma: honored colleagues, I rise today to remind you of principles that once guided this august body. The right of citizens to choose their representatives, to voice dissent without fear, to participate meaningfully in the decisions that affect their lives. Senator Treen: with respect, Senator Mothma, are you suggesting that our citizens are somehow oppressed? Our polling data shows approval ratings that the old republic never achieved. Mon Mothma: approval and consent are not the same thing, Senator Treen. A population can be content without being free. Senator Malorum: but what practical difference does that make? If people are happy, healthy, and prosperous, why does the mechanism of governance matter? Mon Mothma: because freedom is not just about outcomes, it's about process. It's about the right to make our own mistakes, to choose our own path, even if that path is more difficult. Senator Treen. That sounds almost selfish. Senator, why would we want to preserve the right to make mistakes when we can prevent those mistakes entirely? The exchange reflects how thoroughly imperial values have penetrated even the Senate. The idea that people might value autonomy over security, choice over comfort, has become almost incomprehensible to a generation raised under Vader rule. Later, in her private office, Mon Mothma meets with Bail Organa, one of the few senators who still remembers the old republic with any fondness. Mon Mothma. Senator Organa, surely you can see what we've become. We're not citizens anymore. We're subjects. Bail Organa. But we're prosperous subjects, Mon Mothma. We're safe, we're fed, we're free to pursue our lives as we see fit. Is that really so terrible? Mon Mothma. Freedom isn't just about comfort, Bail. It's about the right to make our own choices, even bad ones. Bail Organa. And what good did those choices do us? The Republic collapsed into war and tyranny. At least under the Vaders, we have peace. Mon Mothma. Peace built on submission. Order maintained through subtle coercion. Don't you miss the days when we could disagree openly? When debate meant something? Bail Organa. I miss a lot of things about the old days, Mon Mothma. But I don't miss the chaos, the uncertainty, the constant fear that everything could fall apart at any moment. Mon Mothma. You'd rather live in a beautiful prison than risk the messiness of freedom. Bail Organa. I'd rather my daughter inherits a stable galaxy than a democratic ruin. The Vaders have given us something precious: predictability. The conversation reflects a broader reality. Most galactic citizens are content with their lives under imperial rule. The Vaders have provided something that neither the Republic nor Palpatine's empire could offer: stability without brutality, order without oppression. Surveys conducted by imperial social scientists show remarkable consistency across different worlds and cultures. Citizens express high levels of satisfaction with their personal lives, confidence in their government's competence, and optimism about the future. The few who express reservations usually focus on abstract principles rather than concrete grievances. On Naboo, Padmé's homeworld has become a showcase of imperial prosperity. The planet's economy has diversified beyond its traditional agricultural base, developing advanced manufacturing and technology sectors. The standard of living has risen dramatically, and environmental restoration projects have returned damaged ecosystems to pristine condition. Captain Panaka, now elderly but still serving as head of planetary security, gives a tour to visiting officials from other systems. Captain Panaka. As you can see, the Imperial development programs have transformed our industrial capacity while preserving our natural beauty. Our unemployment rate is below 1%, and our environmental indices show continuous improvement. Visiting official tour. Impressive, Captain. How did you achieve such rapid development without the ecological damage we've seen elsewhere? Captain Panaka. Imperial planning protocols emphasize sustainability from the beginning. Every project must demonstrate long-term environmental benefit as well as immediate economic value. visiting official jur, and your population accepts these restrictions on industrial development, Captain Panaka. They don't see them as restrictions, sir. They see them as investments in their children's future. When people understand the reasoning behind policies, they're usually quite supportive, visiting official tour. Still, there must be some dissent. Some people who preferred the old ways, Captain Panaka. There was, initially. But it's remarkable how perspectives change when people see concrete improvements in their daily lives. It's hard to argue with results. The conversation illustrates how imperial governance has evolved beyond simple authoritarian control. The Vedas have created a system that generates genuine popular support by consistently delivering on its promises. People accept restrictions on their political freedom because those restrictions come packaged with improvements in their material conditions. As Luke and Leia approach their 20s, they begin to take on more active roles in governance. Luke shows remarkable aptitude for military leadership and force technique, while Leia demonstrates political acumen that rivals her mother's. Together, they represent the next evolution of their parents' vision. Their first major independent command comes when a coalition of Outer Rim systems threatens to secede from the Empire. The threat isn't entirely serious. The systems lack the military capability to resist Imperial response, but it represents a test of the twins' ability to handle crisis situations. Luke takes charge of the military response, assembling a task force that's large enough to be intimidating, but not so large as to appear aggressive. His strategy is to demonstrate overwhelming Imperial capability, while leaving room for face-saving compromises. Luke, Admiral Thrawn, I want you to position the fleet at the edge of the system, close enough to be visible on their sensors, far enough away to avoid seeming threatening. Admiral Thrawn. An interesting approach, young lord. You wish to project strength without aggression. Luke. Exactly. These systems are acting out of frustration, not genuine revolutionary fervor. They need to understand that secession isn't viable, but they also need a way to address their legitimate grievances. Admiral Thrawn. And if they choose to interpret our restraint as weakness, Luke, then we demonstrate that restraint and weakness are not the same thing. But I don't expect it to come to that. People aren't stupid, Admiral. They can count ships as well as we can. Meanwhile, Leia works behind the scenes to understand the root causes of the secessionist movement. Her investigation reveals a complex web of economic and political grievances that have been building for years. The Outer Rim systems feel neglected by Imperial policies that favor the more developed core worlds. They've seen their resources extracted to fuel core world prosperity while receiving limited investment in local development. It's a classic colonial grievance dressed up in modern political language. Leia. Governor Tarkin, your reports show impressive economic growth in the Outer Rim sectors. Governor Tarkin. Indeed, Princess. Resource extraction has increased by 40% over the past 5 years. Leia. Resource extraction, yes. But what about value-added processing? What about local manufacturing? What about infrastructure development that benefits the local population? Governor Tarkin. Those are long-term considerations, Princess. The immediate priority is maximizing the Empire's resource base. Leia. Governor, the Empire's long-term stability depends on the loyalty of its citizens. You can't maintain that loyalty by treating entire systems as mining operations. Governor Tarkin: with respect, Princess, the Empire's stability depends on its military and economic strength. Social considerations are secondary. Leia: that's where you're wrong, Governor. Economics and sociology are inseparable. Prosperous people are loyal people. Desperate people are dangerous people. Her analysis, supported by extensive data and subtle Force influence, gradually convinces Imperial administrators that policy changes are necessary. The secessionist crisis becomes an opportunity to restructure Imperial governance in ways that address legitimate grievances while strengthening central authority. The resolution of the crisis demonstrates the twins' complementary skills and unified vision. Luke's military preparations convince the secessionist systems that armed resistance is futile, while Leia's policy reforms give them positive reasons to remain in the Empire. Luke: Father, I've been thinking about the Outer Rim territories. There are still systems that resist integration into the Empire. Anakin: what do you suggest? Luke: a diplomatic mission first, backed by a show of force. Make it clear that cooperation benefits everyone, but that resistance has consequences. Anakin: and if diplomacy fails? Luke: then we remind them why the Empire exists. Order must be maintained. The casual way Luke discusses the use of force to achieve political compliance would have horrified the Jedi of old. But in the context of the Vader Empire, it's simply pragmatic governance. Force is not the first option, but it's always available as a backup. Leia, meanwhile, has been working to expand Imperial social programs and economic development initiatives. Her approach is more subtle than her brother's, but no less effective. She understands that long-term stability requires addressing the root causes of dissent, not just suppressing its symptoms. Leia: Mother, I think we need to reconsider our population management policies. The birth rate in the core worlds is declining, while the Outer Rim continues to grow. Padmé: what do you recommend? Leia: incentives for core world families, combined with development programs in the Outer Rim. We need to balance demographic trends to maintain stability. Padmé: and if those measures prove insufficient? Leia: then we consider more direct interventions. The Empire's survival depends on managing these trends effectively. The conversation reveals how thoroughly the twins have internalized their parents' worldview. They see the galaxy's population as a resource to be managed, its citizens as variables, in a complex equation of governance. It's not malicious. They genuinely want what's best for everyone, but it's profoundly paternalistic. Their approach to governance combines efficiency with benevolence in ways that make resistance seem both futile and unnecessary. Why rebel against rulers who consistently improve your quality of life? Why demand political freedoms when you have economic security and social stability? By their 20th birthday, Luke and Leia have effectively become co-rulers alongside their parents. The transition of power is gradual and seamless, with responsibilities shifting naturally from the older generation to the younger. There are no dramatic proclamations or constitutional crises, simply a recognition that the twins have proven themselves capable of leadership. The empire they've inherited is stable, prosperous, and powerful beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen. Worlds that once struggled with poverty and conflict now enjoy unprecedented prosperity. Scientific advancement has accelerated under imperial funding. Art and culture flourish under patronage systems that reward achievement and innovation. But it's also fundamentally anti-democratic, based on the assumption that a force-sensitive elite knows what's best for everyone. Citizens enjoy many freedoms: economic, social, cultural, but they lack political agency. They can choose how to live their lives, but they cannot choose who governs them. The few remaining voices of opposition are old and tired, their arguments seeming increasingly irrelevant to populations that have known nothing but imperial prosperity. Obi-Wan has passed away peacefully on Tatooine. His final words, a plea for the twins to remember that power corrupts even the most well-intentioned. His death marks the end of an era. With his passing, there are no longer any significant figures who remember the Republic at its best, who can speak from personal experience about what democratic governance actually meant. The Jedi are extinct. The rebellion is a historical footnote, and the Empire has become the natural order of things. Yoda has retreated into deep meditation on Dagobah, sensing that the galaxy has chosen a path he cannot understand. His Force presence grows fainter each year, as if he's gradually withdrawing from a reality that no longer has room for his kind of wisdom. The twins visit him once, shortly before his death, seeking some form of blessing or validation for their rule. The meeting is awkward and unsatisfying for all parties. Luke: Master Yoda, we wanted to pay our respects before. Yoda: before die, I do. Yes. Sense it? I can. Long overdue, it is. Leia: we've tried to honor the best aspects of both Jedi and Sith traditions. We hope we've found a better path than either offered. Yoda: a path. Found you have. Better. Difficult to say. It is. Different. Certainly. Luke: do you think we've made mistakes? Could we have done things differently? Yoda: always in motion, the future is. Chosen your path, you have. Live with the consequences. You must. Leia: that's not really an answer, Master. Yoda: the answer you seek, already within you. It is. Ask me. You do not need. The conversation ends there, with both sides recognizing that they operate from fundamentally incompatible worldviews. Yoda dies a few days later, taking with him the last living connection to the galaxy's pre-Imperial past. Standing together on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, overlooking a Coruscant that sparkles with prosperity and order, the four members of the Vader dynasty look out over a galaxy they've shaped according to their vision. The city stretches out below them, its lights twinkling like stars in the evening darkness. The scene is peaceful and majestic, but also subtly alien. This isn't the chaotic, vibrant Coruscant of the Republic era. This is something more controlled, more planned, more perfect. Every light represents a life that's been improved by Imperial governance, but also a life that's been subtly shaped by Imperial will. Anakin: do you ever wonder if we made the right choices? Padmé: every day. But I look at our children, at the galaxy they'll inherit, and I know we did what was necessary. The words carry weight beyond their simple meaning. Padmé has achieved everything she set out to accomplish. She saved Anakin from Palpatine's corruption, protected their children from the chaos that consumed their generation, and built a stable foundation for the future. But the cost has been enormous, measured not in lives lost, but in possibilities foreclosed. Luke, the people are happy. Father, they're safe, they're prosperous, they have hope for the future. Leia, and they have us to guide them. That's more than most generations can say. The twins speak with the confidence of young adults who have never known failure, never encountered problems that couldn't be solved through the application of superior wisdom and power. They genuinely believe they're offering the galaxy its best possible future. But as they stand together, basking in the satisfaction of their achievements, none of them notice the small ship leaving Coruscant's atmosphere, carrying a message from one of the few remaining democratic holdouts to distant systems beyond Imperial control. The pilot of that ship is Ezra Bridger, one of the few Force sensitives to escape Imperial detection. He spent years building a network of like-minded individuals who remember what freedom meant, who believe that the galaxy's current prosperity comes at too high a price. His message is simple but powerful. The galaxy may have accepted the Vader dynasty's rule, but there are still those who remember what freedom means. They're few in number and limited in resources, but they carry the spark of an idea that empires have never been able to completely extinguish. The message reaches scattered groups on distant worlds. Former Republic naval officers living in exile, professors who teach censored histories in private, artists who create forbidden works for tiny audiences. Most are elderly, their numbers dwindling with each passing year. But some are young, born under Imperial rule but somehow resistant to its subtle influences. On Lothal, a young mechanic named Sabine Wren receives the transmission while working late in her family's repair shop. The message makes her think about questions she's never been encouraged to ask. What if prosperity isn't worth submission? What if security isn't worth surveillance? What if the price of peace is too high? These thoughts are dangerous in the Empire, not because they lead to immediate punishment. The Vaders are too sophisticated for such crude tactics, but because they lead to isolation, marginalization, and a slow erosion of opportunity. People who think such thoughts find themselves gradually excluded from advancement, their careers stalling, their social circles shrinking. But Sabine is young and idealistic, and she's inherited her family's stubborn streak. Instead of dismissing the message, she begins to research the galaxy's history, digging into archives that most people never bother to explore. What she finds disturbs her. The Republic wasn't perfect. It had problems with corruption, inefficiency, and factional conflict. But it was also vibrant, diverse, and genuinely democratic. People had real choices, real agency, real power to shape their own destinies. The Empire has eliminated the Republic's problems, but it's also eliminated what made the Republic special. The galaxy is more prosperous now, but it's also more homogeneous, more predictable, more controlled. Sabine begins to share her discoveries with friends and family, carefully testing their reactions to historical information that's not technically forbidden, but is rarely discussed. Most people aren't interested. They're too busy enjoying their comfortable lives to worry about abstract political principles. But a few listen, and a few of those begin to ask their own questions. Slowly, carefully, a new generation of dissidents begins to coalesce around the idea that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy has given up too much for its current prosperity. The movement remains tiny and largely ineffective, more of a philosophical discussion group than a genuine political opposition. but it represents something that the Vedas haven't been able to eliminate: the human desire for agency, for the right to make one's own choices, even if those choices are suboptimal. Their impact extends beyond their small numbers through underground networks of teachers, writers, and thinkers who subtly incorporate alternative perspectives into their work. A history professor includes extra context about Republican institutions. A novelist writes characters who question authority in small ways. A musician composes pieces that celebrate individual expression over collective harmony. These acts of quiet resistance create ripples throughout imperial society. Students begin asking more probing questions about the past. Readers encounter ideas that challenge their assumptions about governance and authority. Audiences experience art that celebrates complexity over simplicity. The cumulative effect is minimal but measurable. Imperial social scientists note slight increases in what they term political curiosity among younger demographics. Citizens are asking more questions about why certain policies exist, expressing more interest in historical alternatives to current systems. Most significantly, some are beginning to distinguish between satisfaction and contentment. They may be happy with their material conditions while still feeling something is missing from their lives. A sense of meaningful participation in shaping their society's direction. Dr. Afra, an archaeologist specializing in pre-imperial cultures, finds herself drawn into these discussions through her academic work. Her research into ancient democratic institutions on worlds like Alderaan and Chandrila reveals sophisticated systems of representation and accountability that predate both the Republic and the Empire. Dr. Afra, what strikes me about these ancient systems is how they balanced individual rights with collective responsibilities. Citizens had real power, but they also had real obligations to participate constructively. Sabine, how is that different from what we have now, Dr. Afra? Now we have obligations without power. We're expected to comply with imperial policies but have no say in shaping them. In the old systems, citizenship was active rather than passive. Jin Erso. But didn't those systems create the chaos that led to their downfall? Democracy seems to lead inevitably to conflict and instability. Dr. Afra. Only if you define stability as the absence of disagreement. The ancient systems were stable over much longer periods than modern empires because they could adapt to changing circumstances through internal debate and reform. Dr. Wessex. The empire's stability is artificial, maintained through control rather than consensus. It's impressive in the short term, but it may be more fragile than it appears. These conversations are carefully encrypted and conducted in secure locations. But imperial surveillance technology is sophisticated enough to monitor most forms of communication. The authorities know about these discussions but choose not to act directly, preferring to document the participants and monitor their influence. Back on Coruscant, intelligence reports about these scattered groups reach imperial analysts who dismiss them as insignificant. A few hundred malcontents spread across thousands of worlds hardly constitute a threat to an empire of quadrillions. The reports are filed away and forgotten, classified as curiosities rather than concerns. Luke reviews the latest intelligence summaries during his morning briefing, scanning reports from across the galaxy with practiced efficiency. His staff has learned to highlight only the most significant developments, trusting him to request additional detail when needed. Luke. I reviewed the latest intelligence summaries today. There are still some small groups advocating for the old Republican system. Leia. How many people are we talking about? Luke. A few thousand. Maybe 10,000. If you count passive sympathizers. Mostly older citizens who remember the pre-imperial era. Plus some younger academics and artists. Nothing approaching an organized movement. Anakin. Should we be concerned? Padmé. Not in the immediate term, but we should monitor the situation carefully. Ideas can be more dangerous than armies if they find the right conditions to spread. Leia. What kind of conditions would those be? Padmé. Economic hardship, social instability, leadership failures, major external threats. As long as we continue to deliver prosperity and security, these movements will remain marginal curiosities. Luke. And if conditions change? Padmé. Then we adapt our approach. The key is to address legitimate grievances before they become revolutionary causes. Most political unrest stems from real problems that authorities have ignored or mishandled. Anakin. The beauty of our system is its responsiveness. We can implement changes quickly when they're needed, without waiting for legislative debates or electoral cycles. Leia. Though we should be careful not to change so quickly that we create uncertainty. People value predictability almost as much as prosperity. The conversation reflects the Vedas' sophisticated understanding of political dynamics and their confidence in their ability to manage any challenges to their authority. They've created a system that's responsive enough to address problems while being stable enough to provide security. But they also understand that their rule depends on performance, not just power. As long as they continue to improve people's lives, their subjects will remain loyal. But they also understand that loyalty based purely on material benefits is fragile and conditional. That's why they've worked so hard to create genuine emotional connections with their people. The Empire isn't just an efficient administrative system. It's a family writ large, with the Vedas as benevolent parents guiding their children toward a better future. This familial model of governance has deep appeal for beings who've known chaos and uncertainty. The promise of stability, of having someone wise and powerful watching over them, addresses fundamental psychological needs that democracy can't easily satisfy. Parents across the galaxy teach their children to respect and admire the imperial family. Schools include lessons about the Vedas' sacrifices and achievements. Media regularly features stories about their compassion and wisdom. The result is a population that genuinely loves their rulers rather than merely obeying them. But it also creates psychological dependence that makes independence seem frightening rather than liberating. Why take responsibility for difficult decisions when trusted leaders are available to make those decisions for you? Why risk making mistakes when superior wisdom is available to guide you? The psychological dimension of imperial rule extends beyond simple propaganda to encompass sophisticated understanding of human motivation and behavior. Imperial social scientists study how to maximize citizen satisfaction while minimizing political engagement, how to channel ambition toward approved goals, how to make conformity feel like personal choice. Their research reveals that most people prefer being governed well to governing themselves, especially when self-governance requires difficult choices and uncertain outcomes. Democracy works best when citizens are educated, engaged, and willing to accept responsibility for collective decisions. But these conditions are rare and fragile, easily disrupted by crisis or complacency. The empire eliminates the need for such conditions by taking responsibility for all major decisions, while allowing citizens to focus on their personal lives and interests. It's a bargain that most people find attractive. Give up political agency in exchange for competent governance and personal freedom within defined boundaries. Dr. Nuvo Vindi, the empire's leading expert on political psychology, publishes research that supports this approach. His studies show that citizens under imperial rule report higher levels of personal satisfaction, lower levels of political anxiety, and greater confidence in their government's competence compared to historical data from Republican periods. Dr. Vindi: the evidence is overwhelming that most beings prefer security to uncertainty, guidance to independence, competence to representation. Democracy appeals to abstract ideals, but empire delivers practical results. His research is widely cited in imperial academic circles and used to justify policies that limit political participation while expanding personal freedoms. Citizens can choose their careers, their relationships, their entertainment, their living arrangements. They just can't choose their government. This selective freedom creates a sense of autonomy, while eliminating the aspects of democracy that most people find stressful or burdensome. Citizens enjoy the benefits of political engagement, responsive governance, protection of their interests, representation of their values, without its costs. The time, effort, and responsibility required for meaningful participation. The system works so well that most people can't imagine why anyone would prefer the alternative. The few who advocate for democratic restoration are seen as nostalgic for a romanticized past that never really existed, or as intellectuals who prioritize abstract principles over practical benefits. As Luke and Leia mature into their roles as co-rulers, they implement policies that further strengthen these psychological foundations of imperial rule. They expand educational programs that emphasize personal development over political awareness, create entertainment that celebrates individual achievement within collective frameworks, and design social systems that reward compliance through opportunity rather than punish dissent through repression. Their approach is so sophisticated that opposition becomes not just difficult, but psychologically uncomfortable. Dissidents find themselves isolated, not through government action, but through social pressure from fellow citizens who genuinely believe the empire serves their interests. This soft totalitarianism proves more effective than Palpatine's crude authoritarianism because it addresses human needs and desires rather than simply suppressing them. People choose conformity because it brings them happiness, success, and social acceptance, not because they fear the consequences of nonconformity. The few who resist this system find themselves fighting not just government policy, but the willing cooperation of their fellow citizens. They're not opposing tyranny, but challenging a social consensus that most people enthusiastically support. Sabine discovers this reality when she attempts to organize a discussion group about Republican history at her local community center. The proposal is legal and properly submitted, but it generates unexpected pushback from other citizens who question why such topics need to be discussed. Community Leader Wolf: Ms. Wren, while your proposal meets all technical requirements, I have to ask, what's the purpose of studying failed political systems? Sabine: understanding history helps us appreciate how we got to where we are. It's educational, community leader Wolf. But education should serve constructive purposes. How does learning about the Republic's problems help our community? Sabine, knowledge is valuable for its own sake. Understanding different approaches to governance helps us think more clearly about our current situation. Community leader Wolf, I'm not sure our residents need to think about governance at all. That's why we have leaders, to handle those complexities for us. Other community members express similar sentiments. They appreciate the Empire's competence and don't see any reason to question or analyze it. Their lives are comfortable and secure, their futures are bright, and their children have opportunities that previous generations could only dream of. Why complicate that happiness with abstract political theories? Why risk undermining a system that works so well? Why invite chaos and uncertainty when order and predictability are available? The discussion group is ultimately cancelled not through government intervention but through lack of interest. Sabine learns that resistance to the Empire faces obstacles she never anticipated: the genuine satisfaction of its citizens. The story of how Padmé Amidala became a Sith to save Anakin Skywalker is ultimately a tragedy disguised as a triumph. She succeeded in her goal. She saved the man she loved from Palpatine's corruption and built a galaxy where their family could rule in peace and prosperity. But in doing so, she sacrificed the very principles she once fought to defend. The democracy she served as a senator is gone, replaced by an autocracy that, while benevolent, denies its citizens the fundamental right to self-determination. Whether that trade was worth making depends entirely on one's perspective. To the billions of beings who live comfortable, secure lives under Vader rule, it seems like a bargain. They have prosperity without the chaos of democratic politics, security without the uncertainty of self-governance, peace without the messiness of competing interests. To the few who remember what the Republic represented at its best, it feels like a profound loss. They remember the excitement of political debate, the satisfaction of participating in meaningful choices, the dignity of being treated as citizens rather than subjects. And to Luke and Leia Skywalker, raised from birth to see themselves as the galaxy's rightful guardians, it's simply the natural order of things. They cannot imagine a world where their authority might be questioned, where their wisdom might be deemed insufficient, where ordinary people might be trusted to make their own decisions. Perhaps that's the most chilling aspect of Padmé's legacy. Not that she became a Sith to save her husband, but that she raised her children to believe that tyranny, however benevolent, is justice. They genuinely think they're serving the greater good, protecting the galaxy from its own worst impulses, guiding civilization toward its highest potential. The galaxy may be at peace, but it's the peace of the grave, where dissent has been so thoroughly discouraged that most people have forgotten it was ever possible. The vibrancy and chaos of democratic life has been replaced by the ordered tranquility of imperial efficiency. Standing on their palace balcony, looking out over their domain, the Vader family embodies both the promise and the threat of absolute power. They have indeed created a better galaxy by almost any objective measure. They have eliminated war, reduced poverty, advanced science and culture, and provided security for countless beings. But they have also eliminated choice, reduced complexity, standardized experience, and created a galaxy where conformity is rewarded and deviation is subtly discouraged. They have traded the messy vitality of freedom for the serene perfection of control. Whether that trade represents humanity's highest achievement or its greatest tragedy remains an open question, one that future generations will have to answer for themselves. For now, the galaxy sleeps peacefully under the watchful eyes of its benevolent guardians, dreaming dreams that have been carefully curated for their contentment and safety. In the end, Padmé Amidala got exactly what she wanted. She saved the man she loved and built a perfect world for their children. The fact that perfection came at the cost of freedom is a price she was willing to pay, and one that most of the galaxy seems willing to accept. The question that remains is whether her children will prove as wise as she believes them to be, or whether the seeds of their own downfall have already been planted in the very perfection they've inherited. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.